Well, Sean, we have seen racial tensions get to an all-time high this summer, and it seems like what should be bringing us closer together is unfortunately driving our nation even further apart. Well, our next guest has just released a new book with a suggested solution. It's just titled What Black and White America Must Do Now, a prescription to move beyond race. Let's welcome political commentator and author Armstrong Williams. Armstrong, thanks for being part of the show. Welcome.
My pleasure.
All right, this book could not be more timely. It just feels like there's so much unrest out there. Every day we see something new, it feels like. What is your prescription for moving beyond race?
You know, we all, when we hear about the George Floyds of the world and the Breonna Taylor and the law enforcement officer who's on the other end of why they're dead, the media always couches this into black and white. We only seem to care about people who die in such a horrific way when it's a matter of race. But what we don't talk about enough is whether they're Jewish or Asians or white Americans. There's police brutality and people dying at the hands of some rogue cops more often than we want to acknowledge. And when you look at someone like George Floyd, his race should be the last thing that matters to you. It's just that no one should die this way with a law enforcement officer on their neck for almost 10 minutes. It's the fact that it strips us all of our humanity when we see some law enforcement officer who has no heart, no kind of compassion, and total disregard for his Hippocratic oath, first do no harm. And we should be outraged because of the individual, not because of the group. We don't want to think that when you see white men, they're either serial racists, they're bigoted, they're racist, and we think that group speak for everybody. But we are individuals first, and we've got to get back to the rugged individualism, because when we are outraged because it's a destruction of humanity, then all of us can share in that pain and all of us can be part of that solution.
You know, Armstrong, I get it, right? There are bad apples in every industry, in every race. And so there's a big difference between somebody targeting someone necessarily because of their race versus them just being a jerk or a bad person. But then there are issues of actual underlying race. And as Lindsay said in the opening, you know, there is this feeling that sometimes instead of bringing us together, a lot of what's happening is pushing us apart. And one example right now is we're seeing at the start of these NFL games, they play the national anthem and then the black national anthem. And tell me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I just feel like there shouldn't be a black national anthem and an other anthem. It should be one together. We deal with our problems. We make the country stronger, better. But the more that we have a black national anthem and a black this and a black that, in some ways it continues to divide us.
Well, we're all are Americans first. And what the mainstream media does, and also institutions of higher learning, pour out many of our kids until we don't recognize them 4 or 5 years later when they graduate from school. We make everything about race, and all of this instantly we make our days should be about our national anthem, not the Negro national anthem, not some Jewish anthem, not some white anthem. This is where all Americans come together. And what happens is when you start forcing this upon Americans, you begin to lose their audience because you're giving it this politically correctness. I turned on ESPN a month ago to watch the NBA playoffs, and all of a sudden I saw Black Lives Matter splattered at every end of the court. And I said, my God, what is this? This is absolutely insane. This is crazy. Why would owners, why would the NBA, why would anybody kowtow to this? This is not going to help heal us. This is going to further divide us. On Sundays, on weekends, that is sacred space for us, and we should be one America. And no matter what we may do during the weekdays, all we hear about race, we hear about protests, we hear about elections, we hear about politicians. We need some sacred space sometimes. So I absolutely agree. And not because it's black or white, it's because we are Americans first, not balkanized America.
You know, one thing, when I grew up, Armstrong, I was taught that it was the world should not see in color, essentially, that someone should be judged on their merit, not on their color. But something that I've been recognizing lately is that people want to be recognized for the color of their skin. Am I reading that right?
You know, it goes back to Ayn Rand's book of the 70s when she wrote about the fountainhead and what happens when you have the ability to herd people together and they begin to see themselves as group and not as individuals. Whatever happened to George Floyd, then there are many blacks who believe that will always happen to them. And so what happens is you lose your own identity, you lose your individuality, and you get caught up in the group thing. What happened to George Floyd has no reflection of me except for the fact that he should not have died for no reason at all. I'm upset about it, as I said earlier, because of what happens when human beings are treated in such a way. This should not be allowed among this rogue law enforcement. But the bottom line is that people want to belong for something. And listen, I'm not going to blame this totally on Black America, because listen, from human slavery to de jure segregation, Blacks have had to have their own institutions, their own separate clubs, their own institutions. And so Blacks were segregated in this way, where because of the color of their skin, they were treated differently. And so I understand it's going to take more than something overnight to sort of get away from that group thing, but we've got to start seeing ourselves as individuals and judging ourselves as individuals, and not believing just because some white person was in Central Park and she looked upon this jogger and was calling police when he did no harm, that this speaks of what all white women are and what all white people are about. That was that individual. It has to go to their value system. And whatever happened to them early in their life to make them to believe that this man who happened to be Black was a threat to them had nothing to do with her race. It had to do with her own insecurities, her fear, and her own deceit and outright lies and what she lied to in law enforcement. It is no indictment of you or anybody else except that individual.
Yeah. Armstrong, congratulations on a great book. You've been out there preaching for years about the right things to do and conservative values. And so thank you for putting this book out there and hopefully helping to move us in the right direction in terms of healing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm very grateful, and I wish you all well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, once again, Armstrong Williams' new book is called What Black and White America Must Do Now, a prescription to move beyond race. All right, Sean, to prepare for our next guest, I have to ask a little question for you. Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, what do you get?
The quiz is coming early, huh?
Yeah, it's coming early because you don't ever get to take it.
That's right.
All right, what do you get when you combine pop culture with politics? All right, well, I'm going to have the answer for you when you get back.
No.
You have time to think about
Not much.
it. All right, you have some time to think about it. We'll be right back.